Hi, this is Nikki Devon, and I am here for a second time today, but this time with multi-instrumentalist Lloyd Maines for a special bonus episode sponsored by Tecovas called Walk a Mile in Their Boots. It's Thursday, January 23rd. I'm Nikki Devon, and this is what Austin's talking about. Hello, I am here with the Lloyd Maines, musician, overall incredible producer, Austin royalty. Now, we're going to dive right in. You are a big part of Austin's music scene. You performed on ACL TV more than anyone else, which makes you an icon. Makes you iconic to the show in general. How do you feel about being such a key instrumentalist in this city?
I was born and raised in Lubbock, Texas, and I moved to Austin in 1998. But I just consider myself really lucky. I have tried to become as good a musician as I can, and I've never had any lessons at all. I never had a music lesson in my life. I just
Are
try
you
to
serious?
learn. Not at all. Not at all. When I was in school, it was a really tiny school, and so you either played football or you played in the band.
That's Texas.
Yeah, totally. So my brothers and I all played football. So we never had a chance to play in the school band. I've just been lucky enough to be around great players. I've always paid attention to what they do. And I try to learn I've just tried to learn from every player I've ever been around. And that translated to me getting to work with a lot of people. Started off with my brothers and I had a band called the Maines Brothers Band back in Lubbock. And Joe Ely and the Flatlanders, those guys are from Lubbock. So Joe came by and said, "Hey, I'm trying to put a band together to play this place called the Main Street Saloon, which is right across from Texas Tech." And I said, "Sure, I'll play." So I went and played with him, and it was totally unrehearsed. And this is before Joe started doing many of his own songs. We did Hank Williams songs, we did Johnny Cash songs, just like whatever Joe knew.
Love it.
He would just tell us what key, and then we would just play it. And so we played the first weekend, and we made like $50 each, which back in 1973 was a lot of money. And I was married at the time. Got married really early and already had one child. So man, $50 was like, it might as well have been 500. And so we played the next weekend, and the line to get into this place was like all the way around on University. It was a huge line. And so Joe said, "Wow, maybe we're onto something here." So that's how the Joe Ely Band started. And I mean, we toured all three. We went to Europe 3 or 4 times during the 70s. We toured with the Clash. And so that led to other things, that led to us opening for the Rolling Stones, Tom Petty.
Wow.
I mean, Joe was a big deal
at
that time. While all this was going on, I was doing Austin City Limits shows. I mean, I did my first Austin City Limits in 1978, I believe was the first one I did with Joe Ely.
Yeah.
So that was my first Austin City Limits show. And after that, it was just a chain reaction.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, why is ACL TV so important to you? And not just you, but like, why do you think it's important to the overall fabric of Austin?
I think important to Austin for sure, because it got played worldwide. It was a very popular show. In fact, I heard this interview just last week about someone who had moved here because they saw Austin City Limits. I think people just there was a mystique about Austin City Limits that kind of spread worldwide. Besides the music being, I mean, everybody they booked on there had an Austin connection. I think Willie Nelson was the first show. Asleep at the Wheel was early on. Jerry Jeff. They had most of the people on there were connected to Austin some way. I mean, I know that when I first came here and from Lubbock, I mean, it was like coming to a different country. I mean, there was one traffic lot on Lamar Avenue. Bee Cave Road, the Bee Cave out there had no houses. There was no development. Mm-hmm. There was Uh, there was a honky tonk that everybody played out there.
So you're saying that it's important because it tells people who we are. It brings people into the city essentially.
And it's still the same way. It's still such a friendly atmosphere. It's mushroomed into a much bigger thing now.
Yeah.
But the underlying feeling of the show is the same. A lot of people ask what my most memorable show was. Out of all those, I've totally lost count of how many I've done.
Yes, I want to hear
But
this for sure.
I think one of the most memorable was with Joe Ely, and it was I can't think of the actual year, but it had to be somewhere around maybe 1984, something like that. We did a show on Halloween night, and it was at the old location. It was at the UT location.
Nice.
And they put the word out for all the crowd to come dressed in a Halloween costume. so as you know, you don't have to.
You ain't got to ask us. You don't have to ask us twice in Austin to dress up.
You don't have to ask an Austin crowd twice about getting into it and getting weird.
Yeah.
So everybody showed up in a costume, and actually it was when Joe had it was the band with Mitch Watkins and those guys. This band called Passenger was actually Joe's band. Plus me, I was the only country factor playing steel. So the crowd was all dressed in their Halloween costumes, and by the end of the night, it was so intense, and everybody was having such a great time. And I mean, Joe was rocking out like I've never heard him, and so Joe invited everybody up on stage.
Oh,
and the camera guys were just, I mean, if there's any way you can look up that show, I think they've got all those shows archived.
Well, I left my home out on the great high plain, headed for some new terrain, standing on the highway with my coffee cup, wondering who was gonna pick me up.
Like Joe would get down in the crowd and dance with the crowd, and the crowd was on the stage dancing. And I'll never forget, there was this one guy that got on stage, and he had taken a TV, and he had taken all the guts out of the TV, kind of a smaller television, but he took all the stuff out of it, and he had put it on his head.
Of course.
And it looked like his face was on TV. I just thought that was the most original. In fact, I always wanted to do that when I'd take my grandkids trick or treating years ago.
Yeah,
I would always remember it the day after Halloween. so anyway, I never did it, but it was the most original idea I'd ever seen, and the entire show was like that, and even the crew that was there with ACL and Terry Lacona and all the people.
That sounds like such an Austin. That sounds like such an Austin event.
It was what they call ostentatious.
I got a question for you. Now, of all the times that you performed at ACL on that stage, can you think of one time that just like really changed you as a musician or like challenged you as a musician?
Man, there's been so many times. Well, I think it's including the because I'm a music director now for the award shows, which happen once a year.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
So some of those have been a little challenging just because we have kind of a short amount of time to rehearse, and my band guys, the people in the band, are such great players that it takes a lot of pressure off me, because I can just tell them what song, what key, and by the time we get to rehearsal, these guys have it down.
So you mentioned this now twice, which I find that is true, but I think it's really interesting. There have been plenty of times that I have played with musicians where it's the same kind of thing. They don't need a rehearsal. They just need to know what key the song is in, and you can jump in and make it happen. And I love that I think it contributes to that family vibe that Austin has among its musicians, where you can just hop in without rehearsal and make it work. So I'm curious, You've mentioned Jimmy Day a lot. I've seen in your interviews as an influence. Who are some other musicians that have inspired or influenced you, or are any of them based in Austin? Or who else would you say you really, really look to for inspiration?
Oh yeah, well for the pedal steel thing, which is really my main instrument.
Yeah.
In fact, I call my pedal steel my car payment instrument. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So the reason that always talked about Jimmy Day and pedal steel is that back in Lubbock, my dad would take my brothers and me to this place called the Cotton Club to see Willie Nelson, and we were all underage. But with my dad there, it was a chaperone thing, so it was fine. But at that point, Jimmy Day was playing steel for Willie Nelson, and so I could sit like 3 feet away from him up on the bandstand. There was a little place to sit on the side of the bandstand. I would watch every move he made. He was such a soulful player, and just kind of this mysterious guy. And so I got a lot of my pedal steel knowledge from him early on just by watching what he did with his hands, with his on pedal steel. Like you've got knee levers, you've got foot levers, you've got volume pedals. So you're like every both hands, both feet, both knees,
Everything's
and
moving
so,
separately.
yeah, and
That's
and
incredible.
on occasion you use your brain too. So
Yeah.
so there's so many people that I've been influenced by.
I love that. Let's go back to like your earliest memories. Like how did you get into music? You said you were playing football, you weren't in the band.
Well, like starting way early on is my brothers and I, like long before I even got a guitar. My father and my uncles had a band called the they called them the Big Mains Brothers. They called my brothers and I the Little Mains Brothers. Pretty simple. And we used to listen to my dad and my uncles practice in my grandmother's kitchen. It
Ah,
was just
okay.
right outside of Lubbock,
Okay.
and all of us boys would sit on the floor and just watch the adults play, and they were real country, extremely country players. We kind of started soaking it in then, and then later on, whenever we got a little more of age, I think I was 13 when I started playing guitar first, and I learned my first chords out of a Mel Bay chord book. I saved my money and I bought that book at a local drugstore for $2. And then my brothers picked up on that, and I taught my brothers the same chords. And so one brother got a bass guitar. My uncle gave him a nice Fender P bass. Another brother played acoustic. So we started playing at these gigs where my dad and his band would play.
Ah.
And I've actually heard recordings of that stuff, and we were terrible. I mean, we we were not that good,
But I
but
love
we were,
that. I love that.
all my buddies back in those days were into the Beatles and all that stuff, but we were kind of going against the grain and doing country stuff. So anyway, we played as the Little Mains Brothers band, from the time I was 13, 14 years old until I got out of high school,
I love it.
and then after that, I got married really early. I was 19 when I got married. My wife was 18, and she's still tolerating me to this day. I have no idea why. Uh, but anyway, so I was married. We'd started a family. I was scrounging around. I mean, I actually worked at a jewelry store. I was just trying to do anything to make a living back then. And I was still playing honky tonks just on my own. My brothers had all scattered out and went to college and all this stuff. So I got a call. Let's see, I was working part time at a music store, and I got a call from this recording studio right down the way, and they said, we'd like for you to bring your pedal steel and play on a commercial for us, and it'll pay. I forget what it paid. It wasn't much, but to me it was great. So I took my pedal steel down, and it was for a plumbing company called Dale Bowles Plumbing, and it was just a 30-second jingle and a 60-second jingle. So I played my steel part, and then I listened back to it, and it's the first time I'd ever heard myself come back over speakers. And at that point, see, I was probably 21 years old or so. At that point, I went back and told my wife, I said, this is what I want to do. I said, when I heard myself come back over those speakers,
Yes.
and like it came over me that even though that was just a commercial and would probably be forgotten, it was going to be on. It was always going to be out in the world for someone to hear, and then at that same studio, they started calling me back for acoustic guitar stuff and steel. And so I started playing on every record I could play on. A lot of country gospel. I actually produced a couple of conjunto bands. So I sort of got to where I understood
Nice.
the whole Mexican music
Yeah.
thing. I still remember all that stuff, and I still kind of grab hold of what I learned back in those days with even some of the recordings I do now.
I mean, it's invaluable. Yeah, of course. So now
Yeah.
I'm sure you are asked about your daughter a lot.
Oh yeah.
The chicks
Well,
were
actually, in fact, that you brought that up, I've actually kind of lost my own name because for the last several years, people just refer to me as Natalie's
as
dad.
Natalie's dad. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So the chicks were at my intro into country music. They really were.
Yeah.
They made it accessible in a way that it was rare back when I started listening to it. So, not for nothing, you're listed as producer of one of my favorite songs, Long Time Gone. It's like my karaoke star moment. I love that song. But it doesn't stop
yeah.
there. Like you've been saying, you have played with so many people, you've produced so many people. How does it feel to see your influence, not just in your daughter's music, but just like across genres?
I mean, it makes me feel good. I mean, I definitely never lose perspective, and I've never looked at myself as like above anybody else. I mean, I just do what I do, but I mean, it makes me feel like I've played some sort of part, some sort of positive influence on the music, and like I said, I've never let my head get too big. I mean, I could have retired a long time ago, but it's like, and do what? I mean, this is
Exactly.
This is all I know. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. I don't have a bass boat. I don't play golf, so I just do music, And I do feel extremely lucky. I think that a lot of my work, I feed off of the artist. I mean, I never go into a session thinking like any kind of preconceived notion, except I kind of kid around and say I've got three rules in the studio. When you go in the studio with me, is in tune, in time, and under budget.
I love it. So you mentioned that you never had a music lesson, but do you have any kind of like lessons or advice for any musician listening that's like on the grind trying to figure out how to make a living as a musician in Austin?
Actually, I do. I mean, I always give this advice, and people listen to it about half the time, maybe. I'm not sure if it ever soaks in. And it's so simple. Whether it's a recording session or whether it's a gig or whether it's an interview, uh, always show up on time. Be on time. And that sounds kind of frivolous, but it's true. I worked with so many people who, if you got a rehearsal set for 7 p.m., and then they come dragging their butts in there at 7:30. Oh man, I was in traffic. There's no excuses, because if you're late, you're not only infringing on your own time, you're infringing on other people's time, and time is your most valuable asset. Especially the older you get, you realize that time is your most valuable asset. And also the other thing is, take it serious. I've drank my share of beer in my time, but I've never. I've always maintained focus. Maybe because I was married so early. So just try to maintain your integrity, but both professional and personally, and also hone your craft. I mean, if you're if you're going to go in and expect to be a studio player, or if you're just doing your own songs. Uh, don't settle for second best. Make sure you go in with gear that works. That a guitar that's intonated, because it's all going to come back on you if you don't.
I love that. Be on time, hone your craft, take it seriously. So simple.
Oh, yeah.
So now
Right.
now I'm going to be nosy again. Where is your favorite place to hear live music in Austin right now?
I hate to say this, but like I stay so busy. I'm 73 years old, so you'd think that I would be slowing down, but I stay
No.
so busy. I've got a little home studio, and I do overdubbing here. People send me WAV files from all over the world for me to put my steel guitar or Dobro or whatever. So they send me WAV files, and then I do them and then mail them back. And I've done so many. I don't even count those on the 5,000 that I did before that.
Oh my God! So you ain't got time to be going to listen to music.
But when I do, I enjoy. Saxon Pub is a good venue, like sonically. The Continental Club is fantastic. I think that it's more geared for louder, like full on bands.
Yeah.
There used to be one here in town. I'm not sure if it's still open, called the Cactus Cafe.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
There's a new one on South Lamar. It's called the 04 Center. Or something like
that. Okay.
I haven't been there.
04 Center. I haven't been there either.
Yeah. I'm kind of embarrassed to say it, but I just don't have that much time to go hear live music.
Listen, you don't have to be embarrassed because you're booked and busy. That's a good problem to have. That's a great problem to have. Exactly. People still needing that guidance. I love that.
Yeah.
So I am curious, is there anything else that you want to add that I forgot to ask you or that I didn't ask you that you want people to know about you or Austin or the Austin music scene?
Well, I think my first time to play here was, I want to say 73, 74, something like that. And the first gig was at this place called the Split Rail. It's no longer there. It just seems like it was a little more homegrown, and maybe people didn't take themselves quite so serious. That is one thing I wanted to add. If I have a chance to like influence the young people coming up, take your music serious, but don't take yourselves too serious, because that's
important distinction.
You nuts.
Yeah, important distinction.
Yeah. And I've just found over the years, people who take themselves too serious are boring. They are boring. Just boring.
I cannot agree more. Oh my God, that's so true. I love that. Thank you so much for being here. This has really just been a treat for me. This has been a pleasure for me just to be here.
Actually, me too, because you asked great questions, which means that you did your research.
We're very lucky that you have a bunch of music nerds on our team. So we had to pare it down so we can fit it into an episode. This has been a delight. So thank you for being here with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you all for choosing me to interview, because it's an honor.
Lloyd Maines, thanks for joining us on this special episode of CityCast Austin, sponsored by Tecovas. We'll have a link to their Austin stores in our show notes.